Certainly. Here's a list of notable atheist or non-religious stars from Hollywood's golden age, approximately 1930s, 1960s. While many of these actors were private about their beliefs, some openly identified as atheists or expressed secular views. The richest. Katharine Hepburn, one of Hollywood's most iconic and independent stars, openly identified as an atheist, famously stating, "I'm an atheist, and that's it." Known for her strong will and fierce individuality, Hepburn often rejected the norms and expectations placed on women in her era, both in her personal life and career. Her boldness extended to her beliefs, as she unapologetically distanced herself from organized religion. In an industry and time where religious affiliation was often expected or assumed, Hepburn's candidness was both rare and refreshing. She focused instead on living a meaningful life through personal conviction, creativity, and honesty. Despite facing criticism for her beliefs, her career flourished, earning her 4 Academy Awards and solidifying her legacy as one of the greatest actors of all time. Hepburn's unapologetic stance on atheism remains a powerful reminder of the value of authenticity and the courage to live by one's principles. Anthony Perkins, best known for his chilling portrayal of Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, was a complex and private figure, both on and off screen. While he became an icon of psychological horror, Perkins also held firm personal beliefs. He identified as an atheist throughout his life. Raised in a religious environment, he eventually distanced himself from organized faith, finding no personal resonance with religious doctrine. Perkins was introspective and thoughtful, often struggling with the expectations of Hollywood and the conservative values of the time. His atheism reflected a broader desire to live authentically, guided more by personal conscience than external belief systems. Despite living in an era where such views were seldom shared publicly, Perkins remained quietly steadfast. His legacy goes beyond Psycho. He was a trailblazer in many ways, and his honest stance on faith adds another layer to the depth and integrity of his character. Butterfly McQueen, best known for her role as Prissy in Gone with the Wind, was not only a talented actress but also a bold thinker who challenged societal norms. Unlike many of her contemporaries, McQueen openly identified as an atheist, stating she was free from the slavery of religion. Raised in a Christian household, she later rejected religion altogether, feeling that it did not align with her views on freedom, logic, and personal responsibility. Her outspoken stance was particularly courageous given the strong religious and racial expectations placed on African American women in early 20th century America. McQueen's views reflected her deep commitment to individual thought and liberation from traditional constraints. While her acting career was often limited by the roles available to black actresses at the time, her intellectual independence and courage left a lasting impression. McQueen remains an inspiring figure for her refusal to conform and her fearless embrace of secularism. Billy Naylor, a former child actor from the Our Gang comedy series in the 1920s and 1930s, was a committed atheist throughout his life. After leaving Hollywood at a young age, Naylor became deeply involved in the freethought movement, advocating for reason, secularism, and separation of church and state. He was a proud member of American Atheists and frequently spoke out against religious influence in public life. Unlike many former child stars who faded into obscurity, Naylor found a different kind of voice through activism. His atheism wasn't just a personal belief, it became a cause he championed for decades. Despite being part of an industry and a generation where religion was often seen as a given, Naylor stood firmly by his convictions. His contributions to freethought earned him recognition later in life, and he is remembered not only for his early screen appearances but also for his unwavering commitment to secular values. Ingrid Bergman, one of the most revered actresses of Hollywood's golden era, was known not only for her powerful performances in films like Casablanca and Notorious, but also for her independent spirit and introspective nature. Though she never publicly identified as an atheist, Bergman expressed deep skepticism toward organized religion. Raised in a Lutheran household in Sweden, she questioned religious teachings as she grew older, finding more meaning in personal morality and human connection than in doctrine. Bergman once reflected that she did not need religion to be a good person, valuing honesty, compassion, and love over rituals or dogma. Her personal life, often scrutinized due to her bold choices and refusal to conform to societal norms, echoed her philosophical independence. While not overtly outspoken about her beliefs, Bergman's quiet detachment from religious institutions speaks to her thoughtful, humanistic worldview and the strength she drew from within rather than from fate. Bette Davis, one of Hollywood's most iconic and fiery actresses, was known for her sharp wit, fierce independence, and unapologetic opinions, qualities that extended to her views on religion. While she never outright declared herself an atheist, Davis was openly skeptical of organized religion and religious authority. She often emphasized self-reliance, once stating that she believed in hard work and personal responsibility more than prayer or divine intervention. Raised in a Protestant household, Davis gradually distanced herself from religious traditions, favoring a more pragmatic, grounded approach to life. Her skepticism reflected a broader theme in her career, playing strong, complex women who defied convention and didn't wait around to be saved. In a time when many stars carefully maintained a religious image, Davis was refreshingly honest about her doubts. Her legacy as a powerhouse performer is matched by her unwavering commitment to authenticity, including her critical stance on religious institutions. James Stewart, beloved for his roles in classics like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, was often seen as the embodiment of American decency and faith. However, behind his wholesome screen image, Stewart held more nuanced personal beliefs. Raised in a devout Presbyterian household, he gradually drifted toward agnosticism later in life. While he rarely spoke openly about religion, close friends and biographers noted that Stewart questioned the existence of a personal God and did not regularly participate in religious practices. His experiences during World War II, where he served as a decorated bomber pilot, profoundly affected his worldview, deepening his philosophical reflections on life, death, and meaning. Despite his agnostic leanings, Stewart maintained a strong moral compass, grounded in integrity, compassion, and personal responsibility rather than religious doctrine. His quiet, thoughtful skepticism added depth to his character, both on screen and in real life. Marlene Dietrich, the legendary German-American actress and singer, was as fearless in her personal beliefs as she was on screen. Known for her androgynous style, bold political stances, and unforgettable performances in films like The Blue Angel and Morocco, Dietrich was openly critical of both religion and rigid societal structures. She identified as an atheist and often expressed disdain for religious dogma, which she saw as a tool for control rather than comfort. Her views were particularly radical for her time, especially in the conservative climate of early to mid-20th century Hollywood. Dietrich valued reason, individual freedom, and human connection over faith-based ideologies. Her secular outlook was matched by her progressive politics. She defied Nazi Germany, supported American troops during World War II, and championed LGBTQ+ rights long before it was common. Marlene Dietrich remains a symbol of intellectual rebellion, elegance, and unapologetic authenticity in both life and belief. Greta Garbo, one of the most enigmatic stars of Hollywood's golden age, was known for her intense privacy and minimalist lifestyle. While she never publicly identified as an atheist, Garbo was notably indifferent to religion and distanced herself from spiritual institutions. Raised in a Lutheran household in Sweden, she rarely spoke about faith and showed little interest in religious practices throughout her life. Instead, Garbo focused on introspection, solitude, and a personal code of ethics that didn't rely on organized belief systems. Her withdrawn nature and reluctance to engage with public or religious expectations fueled her mystique. Garbo famously retired from acting at the height of her fame, choosing a quiet, private life away from the spotlight, a decision guided more by inner peace than any spiritual motivation. Though not outspoken, her secular approach to life reflected a quiet rebellion against societal norms, making her a unique and thoughtful figure in Hollywood history. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling star of films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood, was as notorious for his off-screen antics as he was celebrated for his charismatic screen presence. Known for his rebellious and hedonistic lifestyle, Flynn held a skeptical view of religion throughout his life. Though raised in a religious household in Tasmania, he often questioned the relevance and sincerity of organized faith. He once remarked that he considered religion more of a social convention than a personal conviction. Flynn's worldview was shaped by his adventurous spirit, love of freedom, and deep distrust of authority, including religious institutions. His autobiographical writings reflect a man more interested in experience, pleasure, and intellectual freedom than in doctrines or dogmas. While not formally atheist, Flynn's skeptical, irreverent attitude toward religion set him apart in an era where public figures often maintained a facade of piety, reinforcing his image as Hollywood's ultimate rogue. Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest actors in the history of stage and screen, was known for his extraordinary talent and sharp intellect. Though he did not publicly proclaim atheism, Olivier's views leaned toward skepticism of religious doctrine. Raised in a religious household with an Anglican background, he gradually distanced himself from formal religion as he matured. Colleagues and biographers have noted that Olivier placed greater faith in art, reason, and human potential than in any divine authority. He once suggested that acting, for him, was a form of spiritual expression, one grounded in human emotion rather than religious belief. In his private life, Olivier was introspective and often wrestled with existential questions, yet he remained unconvinced by traditional religious answers. His thoughtful skepticism, though quietly held, reflects a personal philosophy rooted more in inquiry and creativity than in faith. Olivier's legacy lies in his artistry, not dogma, an eternal tribute to human brilliance. Orson Welles, the visionary behind Citizen Kane and one of the most influential filmmakers of all time, held complex and often critical views on religion. Though he identified more as an agnostic than an outright atheist, Welles was outspoken in his skepticism toward organized religion. He believed that religious institutions often manipulated belief for power and control, rather than fostering true spiritual understanding. Raised in a Protestant household, he began questioning religious ideas at a young age, favoring intellectual inquiry and artistic exploration over faith. Welles frequently spoke about the human tendency to seek comfort in belief, even when evidence was lacking. His films often explored themes of power, corruption, and existential uncertainty, reflecting his philosophical views. Though never militant in his skepticism, Welles was firm in his stance that morality and meaning could exist without divine guidance. His legacy is a testament to creativity driven by intellect rather than dogma. Humphrey Bogart, the iconic star of Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon, was known for his tough guy persona, sharp wit, and understated emotional depth. Off-screen, Bogart held views that aligned more with agnosticism than religious faith. Though raised Episcopalian, he reportedly became skeptical of organized religion as he matured, favoring reason and personal ethics over traditional doctrine. Bogart rarely discussed religion publicly, but those close to him noted his quiet detachment from religious practices and institutions. He believed in individual responsibility and personal integrity, values often reflected in the morally complex characters he portrayed. In a time when public figures were expected to conform to religious norms, Bogart remained true to his own beliefs without making them a spectacle. His worldview was grounded in realism and humanism rather than faith, reinforcing his image as a no-nonsense, principled man. Bogart's legacy continues as a symbol of classic cool and thoughtful independence. Marlon Brando, hailed as one of the greatest actors of all time, was as complex in his personal life as he was in his iconic performances. Known for revolutionizing screen acting with raw emotional depth in films like On the Waterfront and A Streetcar Named Desire, Brando also held deeply unconventional beliefs, particularly regarding religion. He was openly skeptical of religious institutions, often criticizing them for promoting hypocrisy and division. Brando didn't adhere to any specific faith and preferred to explore philosophical and spiritual ideas on his own terms. He believed morality stemmed from human empathy and experience, not divine command. Throughout his life, Brando challenged authority in all forms, social, political, and religious. His skepticism was part of a broader worldview that questioned conformity and championed authenticity. Though he never labeled himself an atheist outright, Brando's disdain for dogma and institutional control reflected a mind driven by doubt, curiosity, and fierce independence. Elizabeth Taylor, one of Hollywood's most glamorous and enduring stars, was raised in a Christian household but developed a more complex and personal relationship with religion over time. While she never identified outright as an atheist, Taylor was known for questioning traditional religious norms and exploring spirituality on her own terms. Her life was marked by dramatic transformations, 8 marriages, serious health battles, and a bold transition from screen legend to humanitarian. Through it all, Taylor embraced a progressive worldview, often challenging conservative values, including those tied to religion. She converted to Judaism in the late 1950s, not out of strict faith, but as a personal and philosophical choice, particularly influenced by her support for Jewish causes. Despite this, she remained deeply individualistic in her beliefs and often expressed disillusionment with organized religion. Taylor's spiritual journey reflected her broader approach to life, fearless, deeply personal, and guided more by compassion than by doctrine. Vivien Leigh, the luminous star of Gone with the Wind and A Streetcar Named Desire, was admired for her elegance, intelligence, and emotional depth both on and off screen. While she was raised in a Christian environment, Leigh reportedly developed a skeptical view of religion as she matured. Rather than adhering strictly to religious teachings, she was more focused on personal beliefs and inner conviction. Known for her introspective nature and struggles with mental health, Leigh often sought meaning through personal experience, literature, and the arts rather than spiritual doctrine. She did not speak publicly about religion often, but those close to her described her as thoughtful and open-minded, with a philosophical outlook grounded more in humanism than faith. In an era when religious conformity was common, Leigh's quiet detachment from religious institutions reflected a subtle yet strong sense of independence. Her legacy endures as a symbol of grace, complexity, and thoughtful rebellion. Clark Gable, often hailed as the King of Hollywood, was the epitome of rugged charm and masculine charisma, best known for his role as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. While he maintained a public image fitting the conservative norms of the time, Gable's personal beliefs leaned toward agnosticism. Raised as a Roman Catholic, he reportedly grew distant from organized religion as he got older, especially after experiencing personal tragedies, such as the sudden death of his wife, Carol Lombard. Though he rarely spoke openly about religion, those close to him noted that he seemed skeptical of divine intervention and questioned religious teachings. Gable believed more in self-determination and personal strength than in faith or prayer. His quiet detachment from religion reflected a practical, down-to-earth worldview. While not publicly atheist, his private stance suggests a man guided more by experience and individual morality than by spiritual doctrine. Joan Crawford, one of the most commanding and enduring stars of Hollywood's golden age, was known for her fierce independence and relentless drive. While she was raised Roman Catholic and occasionally referenced religion in public, many who knew her described her as largely indifferent to religious practices in private. Crawford's focus was on discipline, self-reliance, and personal image, values that often took precedence over spiritual or religious devotion. Her commitment to control and perfection in both her career and personal life left little room for the rituals of faith. Biographers and contemporaries noted that while she sometimes used religious language, it appeared more performative than heartfelt. Crawford's true devotion was to her career, and she approached life with a pragmatic, sometimes cynical lens. Though not outspokenly atheist, her apparent detachment from organized religion and her emphasis on personal willpower over divine guidance suggest a secular mindset beneath the Hollywood glamour. Gary Cooper, one of the most admired leading men of classic Hollywood, was known for his quiet strength, moral roles, and timeless presence in films like High Noon and Sergeant York. Raised in a devout Episcopalian household, Cooper's early life was shaped by traditional religious values. However, as he matured, his personal beliefs began to shift toward skepticism. Though he never publicly identified as an atheist, Cooper expressed doubts about religious doctrine and grew increasingly detached from organized religion. Friends and biographers have suggested that his faith became more philosophical than theological, focusing on personal integrity and moral choices rather than divine instruction. Despite returning to the Catholic Church late in life, possibly due to illness or personal reflection, many believe this move was more about comfort than conviction. Throughout his career, Cooper portrayed characters with strong ethical codes, a reflection of his belief in personal responsibility over religious dogma. His legacy remains quietly complex. William Holden, the Oscar-winning star of Stalag 17 and Sunset Boulevard, was a gifted actor known for his depth, charm, and subtle intensity. While Holden didn't publicly declare himself an atheist, those close to him described him as skeptical of organized religion. Raised in a Methodist household, he gradually moved away from religious traditions, favoring personal values and rational thought over faith-based beliefs. Holden was deeply introspective, and his worldview leaned toward realism and individual responsibility rather than divine guidance. He often focused on humanitarian efforts, particularly wildlife conservation, which reflected his belief in tangible, real-world impact rather than spiritual salvation. Despite living in a time when many stars maintained a religious image, Holden quietly distanced himself from religious rituals. His skepticism wasn't combative, it was thoughtful and private, shaped by experience and reflection. Holden's legacy endures not only in film but also in his commitment to living authentically, guided by reason and compassion. These actors contributed significantly to the film industry during the Golden Age and often held personal beliefs that diverged from mainstream religious views. Their legacies continue to influence contemporary discussions on faith and secularism in the arts.